Saya maguhin ng internet. Roms, 4:30 ta dito, ma. Wala pa sila makalagin.
Kini ang Joshua man din.
Joshua.
Wala kini dai.
Hi, Tita Rosa.
Doon na tingog ya doon.
Makadungog ramo na mo.
Kung na magstorya ba makadungog.
Sino Malacanang. Ha? Pero ayaw magsaba. Sino Malacanang.
Hello, mic test. All right. Hi, Tita Rosa. Hi,
Hello,
Tita.
everybody. Hi, Doc Christine. Hey, champs.
Yep.
Nadali si Pamay sa akong tapad. Ang mga walay kuan. Makadungog ra mo sa akong istorya diha. Okay, man na. Makadungog ra mo. Okay, kadungog ra.
Wala. Sulod do.
Na.
Nanadok.
Okay. Hello, mayong hapon. So mag-start na tayo in a few minutes. Naghulat rata ni Coach Velasco. Coach Don.
Yes.
He will be our host sa lecture for the evening. So kung wala mo isulti, mute lang inyo ang mic ha. Kung na may question, raise lang ang hand. Good evening, Attorney Ray. Good evening, Titing. Hi, Coach. We're just waiting for you.
Okay. Sige, so we can start already, no? Mukha naman everyone is here, tama? Doc? Okay na? Sige. So, let me just share my screen. Doon na lang sa PowerPoint ako mag-introduce, no? Sige, wait lang. Okay. So, thank you for joining us tonight or this afternoon. So, my name is Coach Don Velasco and I'm here to talk about smart training in general. So, when I talk about smart training, marami yan eh. Pwede mo sabihin smart training when it comes to recovery, pwede mo sabihin smart training when it comes to the program. So, lahat yun subukan natin pag-usapan this evening. Right, so my name is Coach Don Velasco. I'm an Ironman certified coach. I also do bike fitting. I also do DNA testing. Ito yung parang 'di ba meron tayo ngayon swabbing. So, yung DNA testing naman similar sa mouth lang. Kukunin lang yung mga cell mo sa tissue, sa mouth, sa lining ng mouth mo. So from there, pwede tayo mag-extract ng data about your individual characteristics. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as well. Before I was a coach, I was actually a college professor in Ateneo. Pero medyo malayo sa sports yung tinuturo ko before. I was teaching computer engineering. So yung passion ko lang for data and analytics, ito yung nagdala sa akin to become a competitive triathlete. And of course, that's what we're going to discuss today as well. So I'm an age group triathlete, and I try to be a consistent podium finisher even if I'm very busy. And yun, I'm pretty sure lahat kayo admit nyo na busy kayo, hindi tayo professional na triathlete na ito talagang ginagawa natin full time. Pero at the same time, marami tayong pwedeng ma-achieve with the limited time that we have to train if we again train smart. I do mainly lactate testing and metabolic testing. Ito yung VO2 max. Like what I said, I do DNA testing and bike fitting. Ginagawa ko din yung sweat analysis at may bago akong service right now which is called blood oxygen monitoring. As well as I also do online coaching. So yung blood oxygen monitoring, diba sa COVID ngayon, yung oximeter, very popular, minimeasure yung amount of oxygen in our blood. So yung ginagawa ko naman ngayon, I can now monitor how much oxygen is in your muscles. So bakit importante yan? Malalaman natin, as you'll find out later on, kung nade-deliver ba yung ini-inhale natin na hangin sa actual cells natin, sa actual muscles natin for it to be utilized to produce energy. Alright? So we're gonna try and talk a little bit about these scientific terms in a more simple, in a more, I guess, easy to understand way as we go along. So if you have any questions, let's try and save it for the latter part or the end of the presentation. Siguro take down some notes na lang pwede natin balikan kung may tanong kayo. Okay, so for us to get started first, let's talk a little bit about the secrets to success. So ito yung, I guess you could say, na overview about what we need to do to be successful. Okay? So the first thing that I want to point out is quality. Okay? When you talk about quality, hindi ibig sabihin nito intensity. Hindi kailangan high intensity para maging high quality. So what do I mean by quality? Quality dyan, ito yung tina-target natin, yung weaknesses natin. So for example, kung mahina ka sa run, your program should be focused towards developing your run better. So that's a quality approach to what you're doing. Kung weakness mo bike, syempre bike naman yung focus. Or kung endurance yung focus. So in general, we have to have a target. We have to have a smart way of approaching our program. Hindi pwede yung, kunwari, program ni Doc, yun yung gagamitin natin kasi gumana sa kanya. Iba kasi yung needs mo as an athlete sa needs niya. At kailangan natin intindihin muna what works for you and what we want to achieve. And for us to have a high quality program, we also need to have two more qualities. One is, of course, to be efficient and effective. Okay? So pag sinabi mong effective, hindi yan, or pag sinabi mong efficient rather, hindi yan pareho ng effective. Kasi pwedeng efficient ka nga sa training, pero hindi niya na-address yung weaknesses mo, which is I guess, the hallmark of being effective. Diba? Meron tayong gustong goal na ma-achieve, at para ma-achieve natin yung goal na yan, we need to quantify data. We need to quantify your program. Umibilis ba ako? Na-address ba yung goals ko? Kunwari, may goal ako, sub 1 hour, 10K. First of all, kailangan natin intindihan, realistic ba yung goal na yon? Pangalawa, are we doing the right training program to help us achieve that goal? At pangatlo, na-achieve ba natin yung goal incrementally? So, syempre, when you talk about progress, hindi naman yan biglaan. So, we need to just have, I guess, important landmarks to be able to reach our particular goal. So, the first one is quality. The second one is structure. So, bakit importante ang structure? Bakit hindi pwedeng bara-bara na lang ang training natin? Well, kasi structure will allow you to reach your goals on a more consistent basis. Kasi pwedeng, kunyari, training lang na tayo ng train. Pag beginner ka, kahit anong training mo, magre-result siya in an improvement kasi you're starting from nothing. Right? Pero if you start to train more consistently at tumataas yung goals mo, yung structure becomes even more important. Why? Kasi kung puro training lang ang iniisip natin, hindi natin fina-factor in ng recovery, hindi natin fina-factor in ng tamang intensity, magpa-plateau tayo. So I've seen this in a lot of athletes, yung walang structure yung training, tapos na nagtataka sila bakit parang hindi na sila nag-break out sa current na ginagawa nila. Yung time nila sa 5K, sa 10K, sa 21K, yung average speed nila are all the same. So that's a single speed athlete. At usually, ang problema doon, yung training na ginagawa kasi nila, walang tamang progression, walang tamang structure, at walang tinatawag na super compensation principle. So when you talk about super compensation, ang nangyayari, meron tayong stimulus, meron tayong load na ginagawa, so whether it be volume or intensity, at meron tayong recovery na kailangan gawin after that particular stimulus. So kung tingnan nyo tong graph na to, di ba? Meron tayong tatlong line. Okay? So start muna tayo sa sorry, anak ko yun, medyo naglalaro kasi. So sorry if medyo maingay sa likod, no? So start tayo sa recovery graph ng kulay pink. So ito yung taong puro training at sobra yung training pero kulang sa recovery. So when you talk about overtrained, ito yon. So yung kulay pink. So kita mo yung pag yung from left to right, yung x-axis kasi yan yung time. So imagine mo na may training stimulus tayo na sobrang taas at ito yung nag-generate ng recovery graph na yan, yung pink. So sobrang taas, ibig sabihin, sobrang taas ng recovery demands mo at hindi mo siya na-meet. So yung before I progress pala, no, let me point out that stress and recovery results in form. Kung sobra ka sa stress, kulang ka sa recovery, ang form mo mababa. Or kung kulang ka sa stress, sobra ka sa recovery, ang form mo rin mababa. So ito yung pinapoint out ng graph na to, no? So imagine nyo lang na mataas ang stress, ibig sabihin yung performance mo bababa. Bakit? Kasi pagod ka. Di ba? Kapag nag-training ka ng 4 weeks na intense, hindi naman yan palakas ka ng palakas. Actually, nangyari, pahina ka ng pahina until maka-recover ka. Okay? So, syempre, napapagod ka na napapagod. So, ang recovery needs mo pataas ng pataas. So, yan, pababa ng pababa yung graph. Pero yung problema, nasobrahan tayo ng training. Ibig sabihin, hindi mo nabigay yung tamang recovery response. Pagdating mo doon sa optimum time ng recovery, hindi mo siya na-meet. Nangyari, doon ka sa too late. Kita niyo yung dotted line dyan. Doon ka sa too late nag-recover. Ibig sabihin nun, overtrained ka. punta naman tayo doon sa too easy na workout, yung kulay violet. So, hindi ganun kataas yung workout natin. Hindi ganun kataas yung load ng workout natin. Masyado ka maaga nag-recover. So, dito tayo sa too early na dotted line. Ang mangyayari, magkakaroon ka ng super compensation effect, pero hindi ganun kataas compared sa green. So, yung green yung optimal. Okay? Ibig sabihin yan, para bang nag-train ka para sa half Ironman, pero ang training program mo pang Olympic distance. So, it's still better than training na overtrain ka, pero you're not maximizing the potential that you have. So, punta naman tayo sa optimum time, yung kulay green. So, pagdating dito sa optimum time, tama yung load mo at tama rin yung timing ng recovery mo. Ang mangyayari, yung peak mo, pag sinabi mo nag-peak ka for a race, ibig sabihin, nag-training ka, nag-taper ka, at nag-peak ka. So, nag-peak ka, ibig sabihin, sakto yung timing ng pahinga mo para sa race. Okay? So, ang gusto natin ma-understand, ano ba yung tamang timing? Ano ba yung tamang load, tamang recovery, at tamang peak para sa race? So, dyan pumapasok yung structure. So, admittedly, parang complicated siya, no? Parang ang hirap malaman ano ba yung tamang load, ano yung tamang recovery, ano yung tamang stress. Kaya hindi mo siya nakukuha kagad sa first try. Kaya rin nangyayari kapag nakita mo, di ba, yung mga nag-race, first race nila, hindi ganun kaganda, tapos ang paganda ng paganda kasi for a lot of people, nakukuha nila yung tamang timpla. Okay? And the third one, which is actually the most important, consistency. So, dito nakasulat dyan, adaptation takes time. So, what does that mean? If you look at the picture there, meron tayong stone stone formation or rock formation. So believe it or not, this is actually formed because of wind, specifically sand na sa desert na hinahangin, tapos na tinatamaan yung rock formation, and over time it starts to mold the rock formation. So dati malaki siyang boulder, so dahil nga natatamaan ng wind saka ng sand na kasama ng wind, nasi-shape siya into that very unique form. So ganito rin yung nangyari sa sea, di ba? Meron tayong mga rock formation sa dagat. So yung ano ba yung nagpo-form do sa rock na yon? Water. So kakatama ng water sa rock, nasi-shape niya yung form ng rock formation. So imagine mo, di ba, ang wind, saka sand, saka ang water, kaya pala niya mag-form ng rock. So ganyan rin yung training natin. Akala mo yung mga maliliit mong ginagawa, you run mo na 30 minutes, bike mo na 1 hour, akala mo wala siyang effect. Akala mo palagi parang kailangan high intensity, kailangan mahaba yung ginagawa ko para mag-adapt ako. Hindi, you just have to be consistent. So as you keep training, as you become more consistent, unti-unti mong shape yung rock formation na yan. Yung akala mong sobrang laki na hindi mo siya magalaw, as over time, as you become more and more consistent, may effect yung lahat ng ginagawa mo sa, again, sa formation na yan. Okay? So again, three things: quality, whether you're addressing a particular need or a particular goal; structure, how you plan on achieving that goal. So again, meron tayong load, rest, or recovery, and peak; at consistency, how consistent you are, obviously, in trying to achieve your goal. Okay? Alright, so pasok na tayo dito sa nitty-gritty details of training. Pag-usapan muna natin ang dalawang types of athlete. Okay? So there are two main types, the sprinter and the marathon runner. Or kung sa cycling, meron na tayong sprinter, meron tayong distance athlete, diba? So, bakit natin kailangan ipag-compare itong dalawa? Kasi they're both runners, they're both strong, they're both, world-class athletes, si Usain Bolt saka si Eliud Kipchoge. Pero, ibang-iba yung qualities nila. Meron tayong mabilis sa 100 meters, meron tayong mabilis sa 42. hindi mo rin pwede sabihin na one is the better athlete compared to the other kasi magkaiba yung laban nila. So that's what I want to point out. One type of athlete is not necessarily better than the other. We just have to understand, again, the goals that we have for that particular athlete. So, bakit ba si Usain Bolt malakas sa sprint at bakit si Eliud Kipchoge malakas sa distance? It all boils down to their aerobic and anaerobic systems. Okay. So, pag sinabi mong anaerobic, ito yung speed, ito yung power. Pag sinabi mong aerobic, ito yung endurance. But one thing that we should understand is that you can't turn one on and one off. Tayong lahat, meron tayong dependency sa both aerobic and anaerobic. Kailangan lang natin intindihin how dependent we are sa isa compared to the other. Okay? So for example, pag-usapan natin kunyari si Usain Bolt, for a 200-meter sprint, malaki ang anaerobic load niya. Probably sa kanya, probably 99%. Pero kung patakbuhin mo siya ng marathon, malakas rin ang anaerobic load niya. So probably instead of 2%, nasa baka 15%. So that will have consequences. Ibig sabihin, malakas siya sa sprint, pero mahina siya sa marathon. Bakit? Kasi if you're running a marathon, you want to be as aerobic as possible. So kunyari si Kipchoge naman, if he were to run a marathon, probably 99% aerobic siya. Pero yung problema, pag tumakbo naman siya ng sprint, malaking part doon, aerobic din. So instead of 5%, probably nasa, again, 15 to 20% aerobic siya. So ano yung trade-off dyan? Ang sprint has to be largely anaerobic. Ang marathon has to be largely aerobic. If you train for a sprint and run for a marathon, you're training your body to be anaerobic kahit sa marathon. And if you're training aerobically and you're joining a sprint, you're training your body to be strong aerobically. So pagdating doon sa sprint, ang magiging effect mo, aerobic ka rin lang. Okay? So pag-usapan natin yan in a bit para mas malinaw, no? What is the anaerobic system? Okay. So di ba meron tayong glycogen? Ang glycogen dyan, carbohydrates. Okay, when you talk about glycogen, that's carbohydrates in a simple sense. So the anaerobic system, specifically glycolysis, so when you talk about glycolysis, gly meaning glycogen, glyco meaning glycogen, and lysis meaning breakdown. Okay? So we're breaking down glycogen. So from glycogen, yung blue arrow, it's broken down to produce energy. Okay? So that's the anaerobic system. Kinukuha natin yung carbohydrates, sinusunog natin yung carbohydrates para ma-turn natin siya into energy. Okay, so very simple, no? Pero the thing is, meron tayong byproduct or quote-unquote waste product pag binibreakdown natin yung glycogen. And that's called lactate and hydrogen ions. Okay? So, di ba na-familiar kayo sa term na lactic acid? Kaya ito yung dahilan kung bakit tayo napapagod, kaya tayo nagka-cramps, etc. Partly true yun, pero ang mas tamang term would be lactate and hydrogen. Pag ipagsama mo yung lactate and hydrogen ions, lactic acid yan. Pero we need to point out na magkahiwalay sila. Hindi lactic acid, pero yung components ng lactic acid, which is lactate and hydrogen. Okay, so again, we are breaking down glycogen to produce energy. At kapag binibreak down natin yung glycogen na yan, we're producing lactate and hydrogen. Okay? So the anaerobic system, it's very powerful. It's very fast-acting. Kapag nagsimula ka mag-run, ano ba yung una nating ginagamit na system? Anaerobic tayo from the very start. Okay? So mas malaki yung load natin sa anaerobic system compared to the aerobic system if we're standing from rest. Okay, so it's very powerful obviously kasi we get to produce a lot of energy from glycogen at mabilis niyang na-produce yung energy na yon. The bad side to it is that it has limited fuel. So glycogen is very limited in our body. Kaya tayo nagko-carbo-load, di ba? Pag before races, meron tayong mga carbo-loading races. Bakit? Kasi hindi ganun karami ang glycogen sa katawan natin, kaya kailangan natin sagarin. na, we need to make sure na top up siya as much as we can. Pero kahit na sobrang top up siya, hindi pa rin ganun karami yung kaya natin i-store. Kahit na punong-puno na yung cells mo ng glycogen, hindi pa rin siya ganun karami compared to the other fuel, which is fat. Again, the bad side to it is that it has byproducts which are called lactate and hydrogen ions. So bakit bad side yan? Okay. So dito na pumapasok yung concept ng lactic acid, yung burning sensation. Actually, yung burning sensation na yan, hindi lactic acid, hindi rin lactate, kundi hydrogen. So hydrogen makes our muscles more acidic. So kapag tumatakbo tayo, nagsisprint tayo, nararamdaman natin, bumibigat yung legs natin, di ba? It's because we're relying on our anaerobic system to break down carbohydrates. At tuwing ginagawa natin yun, nagproduce tayo ng lactate and hydrogen. At yung hydrogen na yan, ito yung dahilan kung bakit nagbo-burn yung legs natin. Ito yung dahilan kung bakit tayo nagka-cramps at kung bakit tayo napapagod. Okay? So it's like a race car, yung anaerobic system. So you see Usain Bolt, para siyang race car. Pag yung race car na yan, ginamit mo, mabilis siya, pero mabilis rin siyang maubusan ng gas, mabilis rin siyang mag-overheat. Okay, so hindi mo pwede gamitin na pang-drive ng matagal yung race car. Okay. So tapos na tayo sa anaerobic system, di ba? Meron naman tayong tinatawag na aerobic system. So yung aerobic system na yan, ito, ang fancy term for it will be the Krebs cycle or the citric acid cycle. Pero isipin nyo na lang parang yung Krebs cycle na yan, para siyang engine. So ang engine natin kailangan ng oxygen. Ang engine natin kailangan ng fuel. So di ba ang fuel natin kunwari gas. Ang fuel naman ng aerobic system ay either fat or carbs. So kung ang anaerobic system nag-run siya on carbs, ang aerobic system can either burn fat or carbs. But predominantly, we wanted to burn fat. Kasi nga tulad ng sinabi ko, ang fat, mas marami kaysa sa carbs. Ang carbs maybe could last us a couple of hours of intense exercise. Ang fat can last us several weeks of exercise. Okay? Pero, kailangan natin ng flame para sunugin yung fuel na yan. At ang flame na yan ay kitawag doon ay lactate. So kaya, di ba, kanina sinabi ko ang byproducts ay lactate at hydrogen. Sinabi ko ang culprit ng fatigue ay hydrogen. Pero ang lactate, hindi siya actually, it's not a bad thing. Yung lactate na yan, it's what allows you to burn fat or carbs in the aerobic cycle or the aerobic system. Okay? Kaya sinasabi nila, fat is burnt in a carbohydrate flame. You need carbs to be able to burn fat. Okay? Clear ba yun? So, again, we burn fuel, which is either carbs or fat, in the presence of oxygen and a flame, which is called lactate, to produce energy. All right, so the aerobic system, it can produce a lot of energy. Like what I said, it can last you several weeks. It's also clean burning, kasi remember, our anaerobic system, it burns fat. Our anaerobic system burns carbohydrates to produce a lot of energy, pero marami rin tayong byproducts, which is lactate and hydrogen. And hydrogen makes our muscles more acidic. Ang aerobic system naman, clean burning, kasi hindi siya nagproduce ng hydrogen. More so, ang aerobic system, it actually helps you flush out hydrogen and lactate. Okay? So, ito yung reason kung bakit, di ba pag nagka-cramps ka, ano ba ginagawa mo kapag nagka-cramp ka para maka-recover? One would be stretch. Pero apart from that, you could jog or spin or recover, di ba? Natandaan mo pag kunwari pagkarera, tapos nun, nagka-cramps ka na, pag tinigil mo, lalo ka magka-cramps. Pero kung ilakad mo or i-jog mo, makaka-recover ka eventually. So ito yung reason behind it. It's because the aerobic system helps you flush out the amount of acidity in your muscles. Ito rin yung reason kung bakit pag nag-sprint ka, kunwari, intervals tayo, sprinting. After mo mag-sprint, ano ba yung ginagawa mo? After a sprint, di ba nag-spin ka? Recovery interval or cool down. Ano ba yung mga ginagawa natin na yun? Those are aerobic efforts. Again, the aerobic efforts help you recover, help you flush out the acidity. The bad side to it is that it's less powerful. It produces less energy. and it's slow acting. So when I say slow acting, kailangan niya ng buwan. Familiar ba kayo sa term na second wind? Yung second wind nangyayari, di ba? Sa simula ng race, mabilis ka, tapos ang mapapagod ka, tapos ang biglang okay ka ulit. So ano ba yung nangyayari kapag may second wind tayo? Tulad ng sinabi ko kanina, di ba sa simula ng any exercise, it starts out anaerobically. Pag nag-start ka anaerobically, hindi siya sustainable. So mapapagod ka. Yung second wind, pag naka-recover ka na, that's when the aerobic system kicks in, so may delay. Okay, so ito yung concept between the second wind. So paano natin ma-address yung problemang yun? Paano ba natin siguraduhin na hindi ka mag-slow down sa simula ng race or middle of the race? It's by making sure we warm up. If you warm up, ang ginagawa mo, during the warm up, you're actually priming your aerobic system. Pinapainit mo yung aerobic system mo para pagdating ng start ng race, hindi ka dependent sa anaerobic system. Okay? Pagdating mo sa anaerobic system, pag ginamit mo yung anaerobic system sa start ng race, ubus ka na towards the end of the race. Pero kung ang ginamit mo sa simula ng race ay aerobic system, may reserba ka pa. Kaya nakikita mo iba nakaka-sprint pa towards the end of the race, di ba? It's because they have the aerobic system ready at the very start para may reserba sila, yung anaerobic system nila, which they could use at key points of the race, whether it be a hill, or mag-overtake sila, or yung sprint finish. So by analogy, it's like an economy car. You can drive it very far, but it doesn't go very fast. So, eto, very simple, no? Pag-usapan natin yung relationship between the two systems. The pitcher is the anaerobic system. It flushes out, it pours acidity, it pours water. So yung water yung acidity. Yung funnel, yung aerobic system, it flushes out acidity. So pag nag-pour tayo ng water into the funnel, kapag maliit ang funnel mo, meaning mahina ang aerobic system mo, aapaw yung funnel. Mapapagod tayo kagad. Okay? Ang goal natin, palakihin yung funnel, kasi pag malaki yung funnel mo, malaki funnel mo, di ba? Kahit ibuhos mo yung contents ng pitcher, hindi siya aapaw. Or kung umapaw man siya, mabilis rin siyang, mabilis mong ma-recover siya kasi mabilis niya rin ma-drain yung laman ng funnel. So our goal in training is to make sure that the funnel is large. Kasi kapag malaki yung funnel mo, mas matagal bago ka mapagod at mas mabilis kang nakaka-recover. The point at which it overflows is called the lactate threshold. So you want to make sure that you don't reach your lactate threshold early and that you recover quickly from reaching your lactate threshold. So siguro more easily relatable example, no? Pag start ng program, kunyari ngayon, di ba, marami sa atin off-season. Sabihin mo wala kang training for the past 6 months. Ano ba mangyayari kapag nag-intervals ka from, a rest period of 6 months? Di sa simula pa lang, pagod ka na, 1 or 2 intervals pa lang, laspag ka na, di ba? So ito yung dahilan. Kasi maliit pa lang yung funnel mo, hindi mo pa siya nabubueluhan. Pero paano kung nag-intervals ka after 3 months of consistent training bago ka mag-intervals? Base work ka muna. Steady run, long run, etc. Lalaki yung funnel mo para kapag nag-intervals ka, ready yung funnel para sa pinopour ng pitcher. Kasi tuwing nag-intervals ka, yung pitcher mo magpo-pour ng tubig. Kapag maliit yung funnel, isang pour mo, apaw na siya. Pagod ka kagad. Pero kung malaki na yung funnel, nag-base work ka na, and you start pouring your intervals in, magpo-pour siya ng water, tataas yung level ng tubig sa funnel, pero mabilis na siya mad-drain. Ibig sabihin, mas marami kang magagawang intervals when you train. Okay? So, ito yung explanation ng ginagawa ko. So, the benefits of lactate testing, which is what I do. One is that we can determine your red line, your lactate threshold. Malalaman natin ano ba yung point kung saan umaapaw. Para malaman natin kung ano yung kailangan mo gawin para mag-improve. So dito na pumapasok yung training zones. By understanding your lactate threshold, we can actually point out what your zones are. Okay, pag sinabi mo zones, ito yung intensity ng long run, intensity ng tempo, intensity ng interval work na threshold intervals, etc. So this will give structure to our training program. It will tell you how hard you need to go or how easy you need to be at. And more importantly, we got to determine your plan of attack. Malalaman natin, kano ba dapat ka-intense yung training program mo sa simula, gaano katagal yung long runs mo, gaano katagal yung recovery mo. So your plan of attack is important. So nalaalala nyo, di ba meron tayong three important keys to success: the quality, yung consistency, and yung structure. So itong tatlo ma-address yon in terms of the keys to success. So here we have your quality, yung red line mo at saka yung training zones mo. Yung consistency mo and structure, ma-address ng plan of attack. Actually, consistency ma-address rin niya ng training zones. Kasi kung wala kang zones, at depende lang kung ano yung nararamdaman mo on a particular day, yun lang yung tatakbo mo. Trust me, ang mangyayari sa'yo, pababa yung performance mo kasi parang parang masyadong dala ka ng ego mo. Diba? Parang ayaw mo magpatalo. Pag pagod ka, magpupush mo pa rin yung sarili mo. Kapag puyat ka, pupush mo pa rin yung sarili mo kasi you're quantifying it based on the workout itself and not the big picture. Okay? May questions ba so far? I guess we could open the floor to a short Q&A about this particular topic first. So if you have any questions, just raise your hand. Or unmute mo na lang yung sarili mo. Questions? Wala? Okay, so naintindihan naman? Alright. So the next topic would be fueling. So tulad ng sinabi ko, di ba? Ang anaerobic system, it uses glycolysis. While glycolysis burns carbs. The aerobic system, the Krebs cycle, it burns carbs and fat. Okay. So during exercise, we need carbs to burn fat. Bakit? Kasi the anaerobic system produces carbs, and together with carbs, it produces lactate. And lactate is what our aerobic system uses to burn fat. So balik tayo sa several slides behind them. So glycolysis burns glycogen to produce energy. At ang byproduct niya is lactate. So focus lang muna tayo sa lactate. Ang aerobic system naman, it burns fuel, which is either fat or carbs, together with oxygen. At ang kailangan niya para sunugin ng fuel, lactate din. So you could say, we need carbs in the glycolysis system to be able to use our aerobic system properly. Ito yung reason kung bakit, di ba pag nag-low carb diet ka, sabi mong naka-low carb diet ka, naka-keto diet ka, ano ba yung nararamdaman mo pag nag-keto diet ka? Nangihina ka. Isipin mo bakit gano'n? Pwede naman fat yung sunugin ko pag nag-easy run ako. Pero bakit hinang-hina pa rin ako? Kasi kailangan mo pa rin ng carbs para magsunog ng fat. Okay? So kung wala kang carbs, hindi mo masusunog yung fat ng maayos. Ang mangyayari, magki-ketogenesis ka. So yung ketogenesis, unless you train it consistently for several years, hindi siya kasing effective as the Krebs cycle or your glycolysis. Okay? Para siyang backup generator. Ito yung main power plant mo. Pag naubusan ka ng carbs, ito turn on niya yung backup generator na yun, which is ketosis. So yung keto diet. Problema, dahil generator lang siya, maliit lang siya, hindi siya kasing efficient, hindi siya kasing powerful as the main power plant, as the main engine. Okay? So carbs are in very limited supply. Ibig sabihin, kailangan natin mag-fuel ng carbohydrates during a race. Kasi, kaya tayo may gels, kaya tayo may Gatorade, di ba? Kung wala tayo ng carbs, ang mangyayari, nanghihina tayo, nagbabunk tayo. Di ba? Pag sa bike, sa swim sa bike, malakas pa. Pagdating na run, nanghihina na. Ano ba yung main reason? One posibleng pagod ka na, pero the bigger reason would be kulang ka na sa fuel. So that's, I guess, 80% of the most common reasons kung bakit ka nagbabonk or bakit ka nag-slow down during the end of the race. It's because you're running out of fuel. So dito na pumapasok yung metabolic testing or VO2 max testing. No? So when you talk about VO2 max, it's just a component of metabolic testing. So what does it do? It measures, it measures the amount of oxygen that you breathe in and the amount of carbon dioxide that you breathe out. So bakit natin kailangan i-measure yon? Kasi from there, we can measure the amount of calories that you burn. So how much you're burning. Malalaman natin, si Doc, nagbaburn siya ng 400 calories per hour pag nagbabike siya. Pero pagdating ng run, burn 600 calories per hour. So from there, mako-compute natin, ano ba yung dapat nating i-replenish, diba, na calories para hindi ka mag-bonk towards the end of the race. So more importantly, makita natin carbohydrate dependency na yon. So out of the 400 and the 600 calories, malalaman natin ilang percent ang galing sa carbohydrates, ilang percent ang galing sa fat. At importante yan. Bakit? Kasi kung mataas ang percentage na galing sa carbohydrates, mahirap siya i-replenish. Ito yung reason ko bakit kahit na, kunwari, marami akong client, itataka sila, ang dami nilang kinakain na carbs during the race. Pero pagdating ng end ng race, nagbabonk pa rin sila. So bakit ganon? It's because mataas ang carbohydrate dependency nila. Mas mataas pa rin yung nasusunog nilang carbs kaysa sa nare-replenish nila. At ito yung reason kung bakit sila nagsaslow down towards the end. So ito yung reason kung bakit kailangan natin mag-training rin ng nutrition natin during training. Hindi lang pwede sa karera lang ang nutrition strategy. We need to practice our nutrition demands in training para ma-adapt natin siya towards the race. So what do I mean? Imagine nyo, no? Meron tayong race. So, ito yung starting point natin, yung blue line, no? So, the first dot would be the starting point. Meron tayong, nasabihin mo ng mga 2,700 calories of carbohydrates stored. Okay? Kung after the swim, babaksak yan. Kasi syempre, nag-burn tayo ng calories during the swim. So, babaksak siya. Pagdating ng bike, babaksak ulit siya. At kahit na mag-replenish tayo, kahit na mag-gel tayo, kahit 3 gel yung kainin natin per hour, bababa at bababa pa rin yan. Kasi it's impossible to replenish 100% of the amount of calories that we burn during a race. It's just impossible for our body to absorb that much calories. So it's about managing na hindi siya mag-negative or hindi siya papatak ng zero. Okay? So pagdating dito, pagdating ng bike, hindi niya na-manage na maayos yung calorie intake niya. So, malapit na sa 0 point. To the point na sa simula pa lang nag-run, nag-bonk na siya. So, ano ba yung scenario na mga experience mo kapag ganyan? Ito na yung nangyayari kapag nag-bonk na yung tao, naglalakad na, or even worse, yung iba nag-hypoglycemia, nagiging lightheaded, nagda-drop out sa race kasi hilong-hilo na, etc. So I don't want that to happen to you guys. So we need to make sure that, one, we train our bodies to burn more fat than carbs. Okay? Kapag mataas yung carb intake natin in training, nasasana yung body natin na kailangan natin ng maraming carbs. When in general, I'd want you to train your body to burn less carbs. To the point na medyo titipirin natin yung katawan natin ng carbs. So, isipin nyo, di ba, coach, sinasabi nyo nga, dapat enough yung carbohydrates natin para hindi tayo manghina. Pero tandaan nyo, in training, hindi naman tayo kailangan 100%. Pwede tayo medyo at a disadvantage in training para mag-adapt yung katawan natin. Okay? So I'm not expecting na lagi kayong fully fueled in training para malakas kayo sa pagdating sa race. Quite the opposite. I want you to be slightly under-fueled in training. Take note, slightly lang. Slightly under-fueled in training para mag-adapt yung body natin. Pag binawasan mo yung carbohydrate intake mo in training, hindi ganoon karami, mapapwersahan yan to burn more fat. So analogy ko dito, imagine nyo, yung anak nyo, malaki yung ano niya, yung allowance niya. Sabihin mo ng 1,000 pesos per day. So pag ganun kalaki yung bigay mong allowance sa anak mo, ang mangyayari, magiging magastos siya. Di ba? Pero paano kung ibigyan mo siya ng mas maliit na allowance? Let's say instead of 1,000, binigyan mo 100. Mas matututo siya magpipid. Para long term, syempre hindi naman yung biglaan, long term, let's say, paglaki niya na, natututo siya paano maging mas matipid, di ba? So yung ganun yung gusto natin mangyari in training. Gusto natin i-deprive yung sarili natin ng the amount of carbohydrates that we take in para pagdating ng karera, kapag tandaan nyo rin, kasi pag training, hindi naman ganun kahaba yung training natin eh. Hindi naman tayo nag-train ng 6 hours. At least if you're training for a half Ironman, no? You're not training your body 6 hours to go all out or consistently 6 hours in a weekly basis. So, ibig sabihin, hindi natin nakukuha yung energy requirements or energy demands of a race in training. So, kaya kailangan parang ano siya, partida muna. Meron kang, you're put at a disadvantage in training para pag na-reach mo yung disadvantage na yun in a race, ready yung katawan mo. Okay? Again, any questions so far? Wala? Just unmute your mic or raise your hand kung may questions kayo, no? Okay, so the next topic will be DNA testing. So when we talk about DNA testing, let's talk about the role of DNA muna in our body. So pag sinabi mong DNA, para siyang code. Kung familiar kayo, di ba, yung mga apps na ginagamit natin sa cellphone natin or programs na rin-run natin sa computer natin, lahat yan galing sa code. So code is basically a sequence of commands depending on certain variables or certain scenarios. Okay? So yung DNA natin, set of commands din yan that would run as we grow older or as we live. Diba? Consistently, yung DNA natin, yung kulay ng buhok natin, yung haba ng ilong natin, yung kulay ng balat natin, that's all inscribed in your DNA. Pero does it mean DNA lang ang may effect? Syempre hindi. Bakit? Kasi kulay ng balat natin, maraming effect yan. Like for example, magpa-araw tayo, mangingitim ka. Hindi ka magpa-araw, maputi ka. So ibig sabihin, DNA is not the end all of things. It's just part of the equation. The other part of the equation is our environment. When you talk about DNA, ito yung code, ba? DNA. So double helix ang tawag dito. At ang purpose ng DNA is to transcribe, and it transcribes to RNA. So, di ba sa mga COVID vaccine, if up to date kayo, meron tayong bagong tinatawag na mRNA vaccine. Kasi traditionally, ang vaccines would be DNA vaccines. Kasi ang pinapasok sa'yo, yung actual virus na weakened. So ngayon, meron na. Bakit natin papasok yung virus na weakened? It's so that the virus will produce the RNA that will elicit a antibody response. So, ang RNA or mRNA vaccine, siniskip niya yung step na yon. Instead of yung DNA yung ipapasok sa katawan mo, yung RNA na, yung transcribed protein. Okay? So, bakit mas effective yon? Kasi nandun ka na sa second step kagad para makaproduce ka ng or para makatranslate ka ng protein that will elicit the antibody response. Okay? So, ano lang yon, medyo side topic lang. Pero pagdating naman sa body natin, yung DNA natin will transcribe RNA strands. And these RNA strands are yung executed code. Okay? So, from DNA, magpaproduce siya ng RNA, at yung RNA na yan yung nagbabind sa cells natin to produce a certain proteins that we need. So, what do I mean by proteins? Kasi proteins are your building blocks of life. your entire body is made out of proteins. So ito yung nagsasabi sa'yo, oh, may sugat ka, mag-produce ka ng new cells to repair that wound. Ito rin yung nagsasabi sa'yo, oh, magpahaba ka ng buhok. Ito rin yung nagsasabi sa'yo na, oh, ganitong kulay yung mata mo, etc. So all these things are inscribed in your DNA. Pero, tulad ng sinabi ko, it's not the end all of things. Yung translation na yan, it will produce protein, pero the way these proteins are utilized by your body will still depend on your environment. Ito yung reason kung bakit, as you'll see, ito yung sinasabi ko nga na DNA testing, no? So that's Nico Helgas, of course. So he's doing DNA testing because he wants to understand how his body can adapt to training. Hindi siya nagte-test dahil gusto niya malaman yung capabilities niya. Nagte-test siya para ma-understand niya ano ba yung kailangan niya para ma-reach yung capabilities niya. So those are two entirely different topics. DNA testing will never predict what you're capable of. It will only tell you the probabilities of you maximizing your potential through changing your environment. So it's still a guide. So ito yung sa DNA testing, ito yung type of or examples of the results that you will get, no. So for example, ito sa upper part, yung may triangle. So malalaman mo that you're leaning towards being an endurance response, or you respond better to endurance work compared to power work. So what does this mean? Does it mean that you're a better endurance athlete? No. It means that if you want to be a power athlete, you need to focus more on power work compared to endurance work. Kasi a little bit of endurance work goes a long way already. So dito rin papasok yung mga nutritional, like yung lactose intolerance, celiac predisposition, yung gluten, sensitivity to gluten, vitamin needs, omega-3 needs, etc. So all these can actually be predicted in terms of probability by your DNA. Okay? May questions ba so far? Again, raise your hand or unmute. Wala pa? Okay, so sige, let's summarize everything lang, no?
Coach, excuse.
Yes, sir.
Coach, magkano naman yung ganyang DNA testing? Do you have any idea?
Yeah, so actually I provide DNA testing, no. Yung price range na is around, right now, before kasi it was around 9,000 per test, pero if I believe now the current rates will be less than 6,000. So probably naka-sale siya ngayon around 4 or 5 yata. Yun. So it's not expensive, and apart from the DNA test, what you will get is a nutrition guide. So from our friends at DNA Fit, bibigyan sa'yo yung guide in terms of what you can eat to maximize your genetic potential. So kailangan mo ng mataas yung demands mo for omega-3 pero sensitive ka pagdating sa sodium or salt. Meron mga recipe or mga meal plan na kasama yon. Okay. Any other questions?
Coach, yung process ng pagtitest, Coach, kasi provincial area kami tapos we need to go to Manila.
Hindi,
ilang araw?
Yung ginagawa lang dyan, may swab. So may swab sa mouth, ipapadala sa'yo yung kit. Para siyang, di ba? Yung sa COVID
parang
testing.
Parang sa COVID.
Oo, di ba? May sa COVID testing, meron yung mga antigen test. Ikaw nagagawa sa bahay. So ganun din, parang ganyan rin yan. Sa mouth mo lang, hindi sa nose. So sa swab mo sa bibig mo, ilalagay siya sa loob ng container, and that container we will send that container to the United Kingdom. Tapos nun, you'll get the results via email. So yung tricky part lang is that you need to send it back to UK. Kasi from Manila to Zamboanga, madali lang eh. Di ba? Pero from provincial to Manila, again, medyo madali rin lang. Pero from Manila to UK, yun yung medyo mahirap. But yun, ganun lang naman siya. Yung turnaround time usually would be, ewan ko lang ngayong COVID pero usually mga 1 to 2 months yung turnaround time. Just because matagal mag-process magpadala ng ng swab to the UK. Maraming pasikot-sikot. Okay? Any other questions? All right, so let's wrap things up, Our summary lang. So again, secrets to success, we need quality. We need to make sure that what you're doing is aligned with the goals that you have. It's addressing your weaknesses. Structure, we need to balance load and recovery to result in form. Kasi kung wala yung balance na yan, ang mangyayari, downward spiral ka lang. Nangihina ka lang, hindi mo na-reach yung full potential mo. And the most important is consistency. If you are consistent in your training, kahit na hindi ka mahaba mag-train, kahit hindi ka intense mag-train, mag-i-improve at mag-i-improve ka. So again, but for you to be consistent, kailangan mo pa rin ipasok yung structure. Kasi kung walang structure, hindi ka pwede maging consistent. Sprinter versus marathon runner, meron tayong malakas ang anaerobic system, malakas ang aerobic system. And the anaerobic system produces energy by breaking down glycogen. The downside is that it has byproducts, which are lactate and hydrogen. So hydrogen makes our muscles more acidic. Ito yung dahilan kung bakit ka napapagod. Ang aerobic system naman, para siyang engine through the Krebs cycle. It burns fuel in the presence of oxygen and lactate. So ang fuel mo is fat or carbs. Okay? At binaburn mo yung fuel na yan, again, to produce energy.
Hey, Coach.
Okay, the two have a relationship. The pitcher is the anaerobic system. It pours acidity into the funnel, which is the aerobic system. It pours in water kasi pag maliit yung funnel mo, mabilis siyang umapaw, mabilis ka mapagod. Pag malaki yung funnel mo, hindi ka madaling mapagod. Or kung malapit na siya umapaw, mabilis ka rin nakaka-recover. So our goal in training is to make sure that your funnel is large. Kasi pag malaki yung funnel mo, matagal bago ka mapagod, mabilis ka rin maka-recover. Ito yung nararamdaman natin kapag ensayado tayo. Or tayo, kumbaga ready na tayo para sa karera. So we have two main fuels, carbs and fat. So baka may magtanong pala, paano yung protein? Protein is just a backup fuel source. It's broken down to produce carbohydrates or the building blocks of carbohydrate. The downside to breaking down protein is that you produce ammonia whenever you break down protein. At yung dahilan kung bakit mabaho yung amoy ng sweat natin kapag kulang na tayo sa carbs. Okay? So pag kulang tayo sa carbs, you break down protein to produce carbohydrates. That's called gluconeogenesis. At kapag nangyari yon, we produce ammonia, which is a very foul-smelling odor. Okay? So we need carbs and fat. Pagdating sa aerobic, we need carbs pagdating sa anaerobic. So during exercise, we need carbs to burn fat. Ito yung dahilan kung bakit tayo nag-supplements, bakit tayo nag-gel, nag-Gatorade, at kung bakit rin tayo nagka-carbo load. So that is measured by metabolic testing. At ang goal natin in doing metabolic testing is making sure na hindi mag-zero ang stored carbohydrates mo. Kasi pag nag-zero yan or malapit na sa zero, ito na yung tawag nilang bonk or nangihina ka na. Okay? So kaya rin tinatawag na fourth discipline ng nutrition kasi kung kahit gaano ka ka-ensayado, kahit gaano ka perfect ang race strategy mo, kung mali naman ang fueling strategy mo, sayang. So DNA testing, it's like your code. It's how your body is programmed. Pero para mag-execute yung code na yan, meron pa rin environmental factors. You can have the genetics to become a top elite athlete, but if you don't train, then you will never reach your potential. The same way na you might, ako personally, believe it or not, I'm not athletic. Talagang hindi. I mean, growing up, I was the last person you would think of na magta-triathlon. More so do well in a triathlon. Pero dahil consistent ako mag-train, quality ang training ko at smart ang training ko, I'm able to maximize my potential. And even now, kahit na 10 years na ako into the sport, pabilis pa rin ako ng pabilis. Kahit na pakonti yung training ko, pabilis ng pabilis ako. Bakit? Kasi I understand my body more and more and more. And I change the environment more and more. Kumbaga, na mas nakikilala ko yung katawan ko at mas natitrain ko siya properly. So that's also what I want you guys to learn, no? If you don't take time to understand what your needs are, what your goals are, and what the amount of time that you can give your training program, then it's very, very hard to improve. Okay? So that wraps up this talk, no? But before we wrap things up, meron ba mga follow-up questions? Okay, mahiya magtanong, please.
Coach.
Yes, sir. No.
Just a question. Kasi yung parang mga bata, they can understand in a simple way. Like, what can you say about the pinaka-basic na pwede namin gawin to develop our aerobic system?
Okay. So how do we develop our aerobic system? No? It starts off with identifying your aerobic zone. So pag sinabi natin aerobic zone, pwedeng hindi naman tayo mag-test para gawin yan. No? So in general, when you talk about aerobic training, it's pag nagsa-start ka na huminga ng mas malalim, hindi naman out of breath, pero mas malalim na yung hinga mo at nagsa-start ka na magpawis ng mas matindi. It means that your body is utilizing its aerobic system properly. So in general, for I'd say 80 to 90% of athletes, you have to train at an aerobic level first, maybe for up to a year before you actually do anaerobic work. Pwede ka naman magsingit konti-konti. Like, after 3 weeks, anaerobic konti or intervals konti. Pero babalik sa aerobic. Bakit? Kasi believe it or not, 10 years na ako into the sport, ang focus pa rin ng training ko would be aerobic. At basta consistent ka sa aerobic, I promise you, pabilis ka ng pabilis. At hindi mas sustainable siya. So that's the reason kung bakit I can race the whole year na hindi ako nababurn out. Kasi my focus would be tamang intensity, hindi siya sobrang bilis, hindi siya sobrang haba, pero tamang load. So in terms of workouts, I like to break down, alam mo to Doc, I like to break down my workouts into sets. So for 20 to 30 minutes, try and hold your aerobic effort. Ito yung, again, effort na medyo mas malalim yung hinga mo, medyo mas malakas yung pawis mo. Effort level siguro mga 6 to 7 out of 10. It's neither easy nor hard, moderate. So hold it for 20 minutes, recover for 5 minutes, repeat hanggang matapos yung available time mo. Do it maybe 2 to 3 times a week. Promise kasi after 4 to 5 or even 6 weeks, malaki na yung improvement. So you could start with that. Apart from that, what you could also focus on is strength. So meron tayong isang component, the endurance aspect. The second part we should look at will be strength. So strength, dito na pumapasok yung weight training. So the squats, lunges, deadlifts, and all the other compound movements, these are important in triathlon kasi it will help you stay injury-free, and apart from that, it can also potentially help you produce more power. The third component will be speed. Ito naman, pag sinabi mo speed, hindi ito yung all-out intervals. Ito yung speed movement. So being able to run properly, yung biomechanics mo. So dyan na papasok yung third component. But in general, I would focus first on endurance and a little bit of strength before you even look at speed. Okay? May follow-up questions ba doon sa question ni Doc? Anyone? Siguro I should point out din, no? sa structure ng weekly program, I'll allocate one easy day, 1 or 2 easy days, so that your easy days need to be easy, so your hard days can be hard. Kung wala kang easy day, mahirap mag-push sa hard days. Okay? Any other questions? Siguro I'm sure nahihiya sa inyo yung iba magtanong, but if you have any questions, you could send me an email or message me on Facebook. So my email is don@flyingdonv.com. My website is also flyingdonv.com. May mga pinopost ako dyan. If you want to learn more about what I talked about, you can also visit my website. Of course, IG and Twitter @flyingdonv. Pero if you want to communicate with me, the best way would be through Facebook. Just send me a message or send me an email. Okay, guys?
Coach, follow-up question para sa mga bata. Example, yung mayroong endurance race or long distance na training. So when it comes to fuel, kasi yun nga, sometimes you don't understand na how to parang basic to fuel, and let's say mayroong mga 100-kilometer race. Kasi
tamang fueling. Sige, so ito yung basics, no? Yung general guideline. It's to consume 1 gel every hour and at least 700 ml of water per hour. So yun yung basic. Pero again, like what I said, medyo mahirap sagutin yung tanong mo, Doc, kasi iba-iba yung requirements natin as an athlete. Depende kung gaano ka kabilis, gaano ka kabigat, or gaano ka carbohydrate dependent ka. Pero that's already a good starting point. 1 gel every, sabi mo na 45 to 60 minutes. Kung hindi ka sigurado, you can do a time trial. Kung sustainable ba siya or hindi. But if you're gonna do 100-kilometer bike, I'd say in general 1 gel every hour would already be okay. If pagdating naman sa ultra marathon, anything more than a marathon, usually kailangan mo na at least 2 gels per hour. So depende yan sa distance mo. Depende sa bigat mo, sa calorie requirements mo because of your weight. Sa bilis mo, calorie requirements because of how fast you're going, how much fuel you're burning, and how long you plan on going. So kung maiksi lang, kunyari sprint distance, kahit hindi ka na mag-fuel, okay lang. Pero pahaba ng pahaba siya, pataas ng pataas yung demands mo. So how can we make sure? Well, one would be yung metabolic testing. Pero kung hindi metabolic, wala kang access to metabolic testing, you just have to do tests or trials na try mo i-simulate maybe 2/3 of the race with your nutrition strategy. If you still feel 100% by the end of the 2/3 race, kunyari, half Ironman, instead of 1.8 kilometer swim, 1.2. Instead of 90-kilometer bike, pwede ka mag 60-kilometer bike. Instead of 21-kilometer run, pwede ka mag 14-kilometer run. So gawin mo yung simulation na yon. At if you're able to do it with the nutrition strategy that you have, na hindi ka paubos, hindi ka pa pagod, then you're on the right track. You're giving yourself a 90% chance of finishing strong already. Okay. Any other questions? Keep on asking lang so I can.
Coach, kung instances na walang gel, let's say ngayon, mahirap hanapin ng gel dito, so we can just use alternative fuel or food during the duration of the, let's say, bike na 100-kilometer.
Actually, kung wala kayong access sa gel ngayon, iba kasi nagre-resort sa banana. Yung problema sa banana, madali siyang malamog. Diba? Lalagay mo sa bulsa mo, after a while, durog na siya. So, at saka medyo mabigat siya sa tiyan. At remember, ang banana is not calorie dense. So, isang banana, maybe 100 calories or less lang yan. Pero busog na busog ka na. So, hindi siya ideal for training or racing. So, ang suggestion ko would be diluted honey. So yung honey, instead of a gel, haluan mo ng konting tubig, try and mix it, lagay mo sa ice candy wrapper, haluan mo ng konting tubig para mas madali lang inumin. And that's already a good alternative. I'm not, siguro ang 2 tablespoons of honey yata, if I'm not mistaken, would be around 80 calories already. So it's a good alternative to your fueling needs. Ano pa ba? Sige Doc, may tanong pa ba?
Ang ito kasi sa mga bata with regards to yung basic natin sa aerobic, yung pag-exercise, yung
Yes, sir.
just based sa, let's say, sa predictive heart rate. Kasi sometimes yung they need to do the aerobic, to develop the aerobic system by doing the, let's say, zone 2 exercises, yung mga ganon. Kasi yun ang parang madaling ma-understand ng mga bata or parang ganun.
So ano ba yung tamang zone 2?
Oh, parang ganon. How the
like,
kid na listening right now can understand without the
technical
terms that we can.
So when you talk about aerobic, like what I mentioned, it's yung point na medyo mas malalim yung hinga mo. Pag medyo lumalim na yung hinga mo at malakas na yung sweat mo, it's usually aerobic. Pero in general, it's an effort level of around 6 to 7 out of 10. So moderate.
How long do you think they should be doing that in a particular
session? Well, 20 minutes at a time, 20 to 30 minutes at a time. Tapos on 5 minutes recovery, you can do 2 or 3 sets. Okay na yun. So 2 or 3 sets of 20 to 30 minutes, malaking bagay na yun. Lalo na with the distance that, ano bang distance ginagawa nila, Doc?
Right now, some of them are doing yung pang-prepare mga 10K or 21K. Then, usual we're preparing ang kids to develop sa sprint to standard distance.
Yan. So, to answer your question, Doc, it's the estimated duration that you're gonna perform the race. So, kunyari, if you plan on finishing the bike leg in 1.5 hours, so do zone 2 for at least 1.5 hours. Tapos kung 10K, plano mo 1 hour, do it for at least 1 hour. Yung workout mo for at zone 2. So minimum yun na hindi naman kailangan bawat session ganun kahaba, pero maybe that's the goal that you should build up to. Kasi tandaan mo pagdating ng karera, ang bike at run at swim pag pinagsunod-sunod na, talagang compounding effect. Ibig sabihin, yung pagod mo, yung akala mo kaya-kaya mo na yung 10K run, kaya mo ba siya after biking 40K? So kaya usually sinasobrahan natin ng konti para lang medyo may konting parang allowance. If you're doing a 21K race at target mo is 2.5 hours, then you should be building up your zone 2 intensity up at least 2.5 hours.
Coach, how about kang we let them understand yung nasusunog or naburn o nasusobrahan sa training?
Yeah. So, para maintindihan niyo, balik tayo dito sa super compensation in principle. So, pag kulang ka sa nasusunog ka, overtrain ka, ito yung per pink line. Ang goal mo kasi yung line mo lumampas ng horizontal line na yan. Okay? So, pag overtrain ka, hindi na siya makarecover. Hindi na niya malampasan yung horizontal line mo, yung baseline mo. So, ang goal natin in training is to adapt. Papagurin mo yung sarili mo, magpapahinga ka, para yung starting point mo mas mataas na. Or yung peak mo mas mataas ka sa starting point mo. Paano kung hindi ka nagpahinga na maayos? Pababa yung performance mo. Yung starting point mo, yung ending point mo, mas mababa or pantay lang sa starting point mo. So, paano mo malalaman kung overtrained ka? First sign is irritable ka. You're more irritable than usual. Second is malaki yung nangangayayat sa'yo. Yung the amount of weight that you lose is significant. And the third most important thing is pababa yung performance mo. Kung hindi ka nag-improve, kahit na train ka ng train, it means that you're overtrained. And that's usually, too late na yon. Kumbaga, isang malaking red flag na yon. So, dapat maaga pa lang naagapan natin, or better yet, proactive tayo in trying to prevent overtraining by, again, incorporating the right amount of rest and load in your training program. Hindi pwedeng sobra yung training, hindi naman pwede kulang. Okay? Ano pa, Doc?
Coach,
Yes, sir.
Coach, pwede pa tanong.
Sure.
Yung sa GU Gel, kasi short kami ngayon sa GU Gel, saan po natin ma-compare tong salt stick? Paano, pwede ba to
hindi, kasi yung salt stick, wala siyang calories, wala siyang carbohydrates. So, in suggestion ko, yun nga, kung honey diluted lang, depende na lang kung gaano karaming, depende na lang sa panlasa mo yun kung gaano ka diluted gusto mo. Or kung wala ka talaga access, meron pa ba kayong Gatorade dyan?
Meron.
Yun, Gatorade na lang instead of, pero hindi kasi siya, ang salt stick hindi siya pareho ng goo. Yung goo kasi may carbohydrate. Wala. Pero pag nag-Gatorade ka, huwag ka na magsasalt stick kasi ito din
Okay. Sige po. Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions?
Romy, baka si Romy may question.
Hello. Coach, may tanong dito kasi
Yes, sir.
nahirapan si Vince mag-Tagalog.
Yes, sir.
In a week time daw, kasi sometimes walang structured program, but in a way, anong marirecommend na how many times may aerobic exercise at saka how many times yung
So ito
anaerobic?
suggestion ko, Monday would be a rest day. Tuesday can be a break, so bike and run. Wednesday can be a swim day. Thursday can be, it's either a bike day or a break day. Tapos nun, Friday can be a swim day. Saturday, long ride. Sunday, long run. Tapos for now, lahat yon aerobic. Paano mo malalaman kung pwede ka na mag-anaerobic? Kapag hindi na tumataas ang heart rate mo, kahit na matagal ka na nagbabike o nagra-run. Kapag steady yung heart rate mo, let's say after 2 hours, pero kahit ganun, suggestion ko, bilisan mo lang Bilisan mo lang yung aerobic speed mo, ibig sabihin nag-adapt ka na. Yung anaerobic load, siguro pwede mo gawin after a couple of months, konting anaerobic. When I say anaerobic, mga zone 4, maybe 3 minutes at zone 4, 3 minutes recovery, around 5 times. Okay na yun, pang break ng monotony. So in general, malalaman mo kung kailangan mo na mag-intervals kapag medyo malaki na yung pondo mo sa aerobic system. So again, Monday can be rest, Tuesday can be a break day, Wednesday can be swim, Thursday can be bike day or a break day, Friday can be swim, then Saturday long ride, Sunday long run.
Some of our kids nag-improve naman sila sa run, some are kasi dito Santos one of our participant, yung run coach namin na nag-monitor sa kids, so nag-improve naman sila coach sa run. So basically, siguro ang 3K nila at 5K, kaya na nila ng 3 minutes per kilometer or 3.4.
Talaga?
340.
340.
Oh. Mabilis, so. So, yung, ano yung question, Doc? Sorry.
Ang another question pala, coach, how frequent, balik kung may mga races, how do we choose the races?
Ayun. So, ideally, choose a race that you can prepare for na at least maybe 4 to 6 months out. So, yun yung key race mo. Kunyari, half Ironman, di mo ng Subic, gano'n. So, if you have 3 to 6 months to prepare for it, that can be your A race. Tapos, yung mga races in between, dyan na pumapasok yung mga B races. So, pag sabi mong B race, hindi siya priority. Ibig sabihin, you don't expect your very best at those races. So, ideally, your B races should be around maybe 1 to 2 months before your A race. Or 1 and 2 months before your A race. Yun yung usually B race. Yung mga C race, ito na yung wala masyadong timing. Pero again, training program na lang yung habol mo doon. Wala nang paper. So in terms of choosing your races, you need to select your your A race, which is 3 to 6 months from now. Then your B race 1 to 2 months before the A race. And your C races can be anytime, basta treat it as a normal training day.
Coach, yung sa taper ba, kasi sometimes it's misunderstand. Example, meron tayong, let's say, maski B race na sprint or Olympic distance. How long do they need to taper or kailangan pa bang mag-taper o hindi na?
Pag A race, 1 to 2 weeks ang taper. Pag B race, maybe maybe 2 days. 2 to 3 days. Pag C race, maybe 1 rest day lang ang C race.
Ang C race, coach, basically, how do you define your C races?
Actually, parang training day lang yun eh. Wala siyang, parang isipin mo lang karera lang, pero training lang, pero
training lang siya.
Gusto ko lang karera. Ganun lang talaga. Ideally, per year, 1 to 2 A races. Ang B race, 1 to 2 per A race. And then ang C race, maybe 3 or 4. Depende na lang sa'yo. Ang C race talagang parang training day lang.
Hey guys, any other question?
Romy.
Me, Attorney Ray.
Si Piping.
Piping. So,
wala
just like yung sinabi ni Coach, kung mayroong mga question, you can always message him sa email niya or sa Facebook. If you want to, especially yung mga nag-prepare for mga A races, you can also contact Coach for mga training program. Sa atin lang, we're thankful na itong mga bata namin Coach, at least naka-experience sila how to have lectures like this, magagawa namin.
Yes, sir. Malaki potential ng mga kids nyo. I think you're on the right track sa ginagawa nyo. Ano na lang talaga, konting ano na lang, siguro if ever, konting adjustment lang. Pero you're, based on your kwento, the goal na lang talaga is to make it sustainable. Na kahit gawin nila for 10 years, hindi sila mababurn out, di ba? So yun, alam ko naman, that's what you are focusing on right now. Thank you, sir. All right. Sige, basta don't hesitate, guys, to message me, don@flyingdonv.com, or just look for Don Velasco on Facebook. All right.
Coach, thank you, Coach, for sharing.
Thank you, everyone.
Okay, everybody.
Alright,
Salamat,
thank you.
Coach, sa time.
Thank
So,
you, Coach.
ang with us is itong si Sir Winston. Sir Winston is preparing for his
Hello.
first Ironman.
Yes, sir.
Na-postpone na naman daw ng
6 months.
6 months.
Oh, kaya pa yan. Kaya pa. Buti na usog.
Jump break.
Ano yung question niya, sir?
So,
Question ni Winston, paano daw i-conquer yung Subic?
Bike focus. Focus sa bike.
Focus on bike.
Mahirap
Sige po.
yung bike. So, saka heat training. Sobrang init niya doon. Although, sa bagay, October na pala. So, pagdating pala ng October, medyo maulan na. So, masanay ka sa mag-race ng umuulan. Which is actually a good thing kasi mas presko, no? Pero yung...
Ano po yung suggested depth ng wheel set po doon? This or 404?
404 lang, okay ka na sa 404. Kasi mahangin rin dun eh.
Mahangin din.
Sa SE-Tex.
Mm-mm.
Ma-appreciate mo yung disc sa flat portions, pero sobrang hilly kasi nung ibang part na medyo dead weight siya. Parang paraming falls flat. So, kahit mag-404 ka, I think mas smart choice siya kasi disc. Tapos yung puro rolling hills yung i-practice mo. So heavy gear rolling hills. At may dalawang malaking climb nung palabas ng Subic sa pabalik. So pagdating doon, maghanda ka na lang ng siguro pwede mo gawing gear, yung combination mo sa 52-36. Sa likod kahit 11-28 siguro. Or
12-28.
Yun yung yung secret doon sa gearing. Kasi pag masyadong, iba parang gusto sobrang laki ng gear mo sa harap, ang hirap na pag pagod ka na, mahirap umahon.
Okay. Thank you.
Rolling hills. Rolling hills
po.
climb.
Sige po.
Yan. Okay, good luck.
Thank you po.
Wala nang question. Kukoy. Pretest na daw.
Coach Kukoy, baka may question si Coach Kukoy.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I think wala nang question. So, dinner time na ni Coach. Ang baby niya, malaki na rin siguro.
Coach Don,
So,
thank you, Coach
anyway, if
Don.
you want any advice or especially those pursuing for long distance training or even if you want to improve your personal best sa mga triathlon, you can also contact Coach for personalized program that yun sabi niya. So, different program for different persons. Sa atin, we're just lucky na meron tayong mga coaches. Coach, we have our coaches, running coach namin si Coach Glenn, and we have our swimming coaches na nakaka-monitor din sa mga bata. And we're thankful for them. And we're glad for the input that you have given us, Coach. Hopefully, wala ng COVID para makikita-kita na naman tayo sa mga races.
Oo nga eh. Malapit na.
So, anyone, kung wala na, Coach, thank you for your time, and message lang kami sa iyo kung
All right.
So,
Sige,
ano,
sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you, coach.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Coach.